Welcome to another deep dive. Um, Today we're going to be looking into the life of Robert Wesley Knighton,
Okay.
an American serial killer who was executed in 2003.
Interesting.
And our sources today are going to be excerpts from his Wikipedia page, which offer a glimpse into his crimes, motivations, and the complexities of the justice system.
Sounds pretty dark.
It's a story that really makes you think about the dark side of human nature,
Yeah.
but it also has some unexpected twists and turns.
Really? Like what?
Well, one of the most intriguing aspects of his story is this really unusual relationship that he formed with the daughter of one of his victims while he was on death row.
Wow. That's pretty wild. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, we'll get into that as we go along, but
Okay.
to really understand Knighton's story, we have to start at the beginning with his childhood.
Yeah, makes sense.
And it's safe to say that his early years were incredibly turbulent and probably played a big role in shaping the man he became.
Okay, so paint me a picture. What was his childhood like?
Well, he was born in Springfield, Missouri, and had what can only be described as a very chaotic upbringing. His mother had 8 husbands and countless boyfriends.
Oh, wow.
So that created a really unstable and unpredictable environment for young Robert.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
That would be tough for anyone.
And on top of that, he also faced abuse.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Both physical and emotional.
yes,
Oh my God.
both.
I was going to say,
There's a particular story about a Thanksgiving dinner at his grandparents' house when Knighton was about 6 years old. And they made him sit outside because he resembled his father too much.
oh my goodness.
Imagine the impact that that kind of rejection would have on a child at that age.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
And then on top of all of that, there's also the issue of his education.
Oh, right.
He only received a 4th grade education before ending up in a reformatory
Wow. A reformatory at what age?
at 12.
Oh my goodness.
He described experiencing really harsh punishments there, beatings, solitary confinement in a cellar for days at a time.
That's awful.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine what that kind of environment would do to a young developing mind.
Right. So do you think that those experiences in his childhood directly contributed to his later actions as an adult?
It's always tough to draw a straight line
Yeah.
from childhood experiences to adult behavior, but it's
Sure.
impossible to ignore the potential impact that that kind of trauma could have.
Right.
You know, the constant instability, the
Yeah.
abuse, the harsh punishments, all of these things could contribute to feelings of anger and resentment and a disconnect from societal norms.
Definitely.
And unfortunately, his criminal history began really early.
Okay. How early are we talking?
He was convicted of armed robbery in Oklahoma in 1968
Okay.
when he was just 27 years old, and that landed him a 10-year prison sentence.
So this was just a few years after being in that reformatory.
Exactly.
Wow. It seems like he was on a bad path from a very young age.
Yeah, and things escalated pretty quickly after that.
Oh, how so?
In 1973, just days after he was released from prison for the robbery, he shoots 2 men during an argument,
What?
killing one of them.
Oh my God.
And this incident is particularly disturbing because immediately after the shooting, he kidnapped a family,
Oh, wow.
including a 6-year-old girl, and held them hostage for 11 hours.
Oh my goodness.
The woman actually managed to fight back and attack him with a steak knife, which eventually led to his capture.
Wow. That's amazing. She was brave.
Yeah, and he was sentenced to 30 years in the Missouri State Penitentiary for that incident.
Wow, 30 years. That's a big jump from his 10-year sentence for robbery.
It is.
Seems like he's getting worse.
Yeah, and it's during this time in prison that he joins a white supremacist gang and gets white power and swastika tattoos.
Oh no. So
Huh.
it seems like prison wasn't exactly helping him to turn his life around?
Not really, no. And then in 1989, he gets transferred to a halfway house in Kansas City.
Okay.
And here's where things take a bit of a turn.
Okay, in what way?
Instead of associating with the same crowd, he forms relationships with 2 much younger people. A 22-year-old woman named Ruth Renee Williams
Okay.
and a 17-year-old boy named Lawrence Lingle Britton.
That's interesting. Why would he be drawn to these younger people? What was the connection there?
It's hard to say for sure what drew them together,
Yeah.
but they seem to be united by this desire for a fresh start.
Really?
And they had dreams of escaping to a new life, maybe in California or Florida.
So they all wanted to run away together.
Exactly. And that's what they did. They escaped the halfway house together.
Oh, wow.
And here's where the foreshadowing comes in.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What do you mean?
Knighton admitted to Britton that their escape might involve robberies or even murders.
Oh, no. So even though he was yearning for this new life, he was still willing to resort to violence to get it.
It seems that way.
That's scary.
And that brings us to 1990 and the beginning of a really horrific 4-day, 2-state killing spree.
Wow. Okay, I'm ready to hear about this. So tell me more about this killing spree.
Okay, so their escape takes a very dark turn in June of 1990 when they embark on this 4-day killing spree across Missouri and Oklahoma, leaving a trail of devastation in their wake.
Wow. So who were their first victims?
Their first victims were Frank Merrifield and his stepson, Ray Donahue,
Okay.
in Clinton, Missouri.
And what happened?
Knighton shot both of them in cold blood and stole their money and their guns.
Oh, wow. So it sounds like this wasn't just about survival anymore.
Right. It really highlights the level of violence that Knighton was capable of.
Yeah, it was cold-blooded murder.
Exactly.
So what did they do after that? Did they try to lay low?
Well, they fled south to Oklahoma, but instead of hiding, they actually tried to steal another vehicle.
Oh, really?
But that failed. And so, needing transportation, they started searching for an isolated home to rob.
Oh, no, this doesn't sound good.
And that's when they encountered Richard and Virginia Denny,
What were they?
an elderly couple living in rural Oklahoma.
Oh, man.
And this is where things get really chilling.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, Britton actually initially tried to confront Richard Denny,
Oh,
but he hesitated.
you probably got scared.
Yeah, most likely. But Knighton showed no hesitation at all. He took control and forced the Dennys inside their home at gunpoint. And even though the Dennys offered them milk and tried to reason with them,
Oh, gosh.
Knighton ended up executing both of them.
Oh, my goodness, that's terrible.
It's a truly senseless act of brutality.
It is. What happened to their bodies?
Well, Knighton actually later told Williams that at least Virginia had enough time to pray before he killed her.
Oh, my God. That's just awful.
I know it's a disturbing detail, but it offers a glimpse into his twisted psyche.
Yeah, it's like he was trying to find some kind of justification for his actions.
Exactly.
So what happened after they killed the Dennys?
Well, they stole the Denny's truck and continued south to Texas, but their journey was about to come to an end.
How so?
Well, in Canadian Texas,
Okay.
their erratic behavior and suspicious appearance caught the attention of a citizen who called the police.
That was smart.
And thankfully, their spree ended there. They were apprehended by the police, and the truth of their crimes started to come out.
Okay, so now they're in custody,
Right.
facing serious charges.
Yep.
What happens next?
Yes. Well, Knighton, Britton, and Williams were all facing first-degree murder charges in both Missouri and Oklahoma.
Wow, so the stakes were pretty high.
Incredibly high, and the legal proceedings were complex.
Okay, so were all three of them tried together?
Well, the court determined that Britton, even though he was only 17 at the time of the crimes, could be tried as an adult.
Okay, but I'm guessing things didn't go as planned.
You're right. The legal strategies for each defendant started to diverge.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, Britton and Williams struck deals with the prosecution in exchange for their testimony against Knighton.
Oh, wow. So they were basically throwing Knighton under the bus to save themselves.
Essentially, yes.
So what kind of deals did they get?
Well, Britton pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder
Okay.
and received 2 life sentences with the possibility of parole.
Okay, that's not too bad, considering.
Right. And Williams, who played a lesser role in the murders, pleaded guilty to 2 counts of being an accessory to murder after the fact.
Okay.
And she received 2 15-year sentences.
Wow, so their cooperation really shifted the focus onto Knighton.
It did. What was his defense?
Well, what did Knighton do?
His lawyer initially tried to shift the blame onto Britton and Williams,
Okay, makes sense.
arguing that they were motivated to climb the ranks of the white supremacist gang.
Interesting.
But Knighton himself kind of messed up that plan.
How so?
He actually accepted full responsibility for the murders.
What, he confessed?
Yes. He said, I know they're going to kill me over this deal. I just don't want the kids to take the heat for it.
Wow, so it seems like he was trying to protect his younger accomplices?
It does. It's an unexpected twist.
It is. So what happened at the trial?
Well, the jury didn't take kindly to his crimes.
Of course not.
And after deliberating for a very short time, they found Knighton guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder.
And then he was sentenced to death.
Yes. After only 4 hours of deliberation, the jury handed down a death sentence.
Wow.
So now Knighton is on death row awaiting execution. And that's when Sue Norton enters the picture.
Who's Sue Norton?
She's the adopted daughter of one of his victims.
Oh, wow. Okay, so this is where that relationship you mentioned earlier comes in.
It is. And it's during Knighton's time on death row that this really unlikely relationship starts to develop.
Okay, so how did that happen?
Well, it's a pretty extraordinary story of forgiveness and human connection.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more. So tell me about this relationship. How did it develop between Knighton and this Sue Norton?
Well, it's A pretty powerful and thought-provoking element of this whole case.
Yeah.
Imagine being in Sue Norton's position. The man who took your father's life is sitting on death row,
Yeah.
and you feel this need to reach out to him to offer forgiveness and support.
Mm.
It's a really remarkable act that really defies conventional notions of justice and revenge.
It really does.
Yeah.
So how did it start? Did she reach out to him first?
They began exchanging letters.
Wow, through the mail.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is pretty remarkable considering the circumstances.
Yeah.
But Sue was really struck by Knighton's apparent remorse and his efforts to educate himself while he was in prison.
So she saw potential for change.
She did. She saw a glimmer of humanity in him, despite the horrible things that he had done.
Wow. That's incredibly empathetic of her.
It is. And their connection grew quite strong over time.
Oh, really? How so?
She actually ended up advocating for him during his clemency hearing.
Wow. So she was asking for his sentence to be commuted.
Yes, even though her own sister was against it.
Oh, wow. That must have been a difficult decision for her.
It was. At the clemency hearing, she made this really heartfelt plea to the parole board, urging them to show mercy and commute Knighton's sentence.
And what did the board say?
Unfortunately, they denied his plea and his execution date was set.
Oh, man. That's tough.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what that must have been like for Sue,
Yeah.
knowing that the man she had come to forgive was about to be executed.
Right. What about Knighton? What was he like in those final days?
Well, from what we know, he did seem to express remorse for his actions.
Okay.
In his final statement before the execution, he spoke very softly.
Yeah.
He thanked his attorneys, and he offered an apology for the pain he had caused. And then he turned to Sue Norton, who was present at the execution,
Wow.
and said these words, "I'll see you again someday, God bless you."
Oh, my gosh.
And she just gave him a thumbs up.
Wow. There's a lot of emotion in a simple gesture like that.
There is. It speaks to the depth of their connection that was formed under such unimaginable circumstances.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
It really makes you think that even in the darkest corners of human experience,
Right.
human connection and the potential for forgiveness can still exist.
It does. It really challenges your perceptions of justice and redemption.
It does. So I think as we wrap up this deep dive into the life of Robert Wesley Knighton, we're left with a lot of questions
Yeah.
about the weight of his crimes, the forgiveness offered by Sue Norton, and the complexities of our justice system.
Definitely. It's a story that really stays with you.
It does. Thank you for joining us on this journey.
Of course.
And we'll be back soon with another deep dive into a topic that will hopefully spark your curiosity and leave you with even more to think about.
Can't wait.